some kind of video editing team either. So I discovered this thing with Juliet called Hey Gen, and it's created basically an avatar of well, it's not an avatar, it's actually a recording of myself. All I had to do was a 2-minute recording, and now every week I post videos. I literally write the text and it acts and looks as if it's me. I mean, we kind of make a bit of a joke about it being AI Steve and play on it, and that we're learning about AI, and quite clearly it's not me, but it's not far off. And so, you know, people have now adopted AI Steve and enjoy getting the video from it. And it's pretty cheap. I think it's $29 a month. And if you create more, I think it's sort of maybe up to the 70s or 80s. But more importantly, if you don't want to necessarily promote yourself, they've got about 100 different characters. So, you know, you could have a specialist in one area and use, you know, one of their women characters for that, and then a specialist in one of the other areas. So you can look like your team is 100 people potentially. So, you know, I don't know, Rosie, if you guys, there's a sort of a young, cool-looking snowboardy type, you might want he'd be the one who promotes your snowboards or whatever. But yeah, I've just found it really useful. I mean, I literally probably takes me about 20 minutes to write a script. I cut and paste bits of other people's articles together, get AI to rewrite it so it doesn't look like it's plagiarism, and then bang it out. And, you know, I get a lot of LinkedIn watches on my videos, maybe a couple of thousand, and all for maybe 15-20 minutes work, where it used to take me, you know, nearly a whole day to do a video. And it's less intimidating as well, because all you do is record 2 minutes of yourself. It doesn't matter what you say. You make some small hand gestures, and then forever it just does the acting and the speaking for you. All you have to do is write a script. So I found it really useful. Does that kind of sum up what you need, Juliet?
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. So the software is called Hey Gen, really easy to use. You don't need absolutely any technical skill whatsoever to use it. So it's Hey Gen. And I think you could get it free for a little bit, and then, you know, it's paid for. But yeah, just one of the ideas to throw into the mix. Okay.
Juliet, could you, sorry,
yeah.
Juliet, could you spell that name of the app?
It's HEYGEN.
Oh, okay. Hey, Jen. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
No worries at all. Okay, right. Let's go. The marketing mix. We've got a really fun session here, because it's I decided to do it in and around one of my favorite brands, Lego. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're literally going to look at the marketing mix through a case study of Lego. Okay, so the marketing mix has been around for a very, very long time, and is basically made up of 4 main areas. Okay, so it's product, price, place, promotion. Now, lots of people do add in a 5th P, which is people, or it can be another P that people come up with. But the core, and what I've put this case study in and around, is basically the standard 4 Ps. Okay, so this is product, price, place, promotion. Okay, now what the goal of understanding the 4 Ps is to situate it as an attack mechanism to defend your golden circle, right? So you've got your golden circle, so your orb that we talked about in the first lesson, and you use product, price, place, promotion, okay, to defend against the 5 forces. Okay, so when you're thinking about where this lies, think about it as right in the center. I've got my core why. This is the beating heart, my orb of, you know, passion and love for what I do, right? So that is the key why is in the middle. Then all the people around that, all the people that, you know, are in, you know, your stakeholders and people working in your company, they are focused on the product, the price, the place, the promotion. But everything should shine out from the why, right? And then finally, you have the attacking forces, Porter's 5 forces, trying to attack you at the product, trying to attack you on price, trying to attack you on place, trying to attack you on promotion. So if we look at a company like Lego, It is extraordinary just for so many reasons in terms of how they have utilized the marketing mix to stay current in what is an impossibly difficult market, right? Child's toys or you know, young adult toys. I mean, it is a really, really difficult market to stay relevant in, and they have done it incredibly well. Okay, so the way they have utilized their 4Ps is through creating a solid brand experience which never changes. Okay, and we'll go on to look at their core why and why everything in that brand experience always adds up to the why. Right, next, they meet customer needs effectively. So the customers understand that why. They completely understand what they're trying to do. And so in that way, customers are never disappointed with the experience, whatever experience that is, whether it's a price experience, a place experience, or a new product experience. It all adds up to the same core why. And that allows them to do different things with their products, okay, to maximize market opportunities in a way, the way the product was originally designed, you couldn't even conceive of. I mean, the internet wasn't even invented when Lego was, you know, first started. And it also allows them to lean in using kind of data driven decisions in order to maximize what we will go on to talk about on Monday, which is, you know, maximize that. Again, we're going to go on to talk about maximizing the opportunity in the market, right, through looking at compound annual growth rates. Okay, so I want you to really think about the 4Ps in line of what we've already learned. Okay, don't think a lot of business courses teach the 4Ps as something which is not connected to the baddies that are coming to get you, i.e. the 5 forces, and your, you know, golden circle. Okay, but you've got to think about them together. The golden circle is in the middle. Your 4Ps are your internal army that are defending against the attacking 5 forces, right? So think about it like that. Everything that you do with regards to the 4Ps comes from your inner kind of glowing, you know, kind of circle, and is to challenge the 5 forces of the market that are coming towards you relentlessly. Okay, so that is basically how we use the 4Ps. And just as, you know, the 5 forces are relentless, they are merciless, they are just coming at you all the time, so you need to constantly be looking at your 4Ps. Like if you haven't, you know, reviewed your product, your price, your place, promotion, you know, on a quarterly basis and looking at, right, well, is it stacking up? Am I meeting my targets? You know, am I competing effectively? Then you need to double down and you need to review your 5Ps with regards to what's going on in the market. Okay, so do not underestimate the importance of where these 4Ps lie. Okay, so marketing mix. I was looking around for a company that I genuinely love. And obviously being in the tech world, there are a few actually. There's not it's hardly any that my beating heart just thrills with joy. So I was like, you know what? One company that has always given me a huge amount of joy is Lego. So let's look at Lego. And I am so glad that the universe put Lego into my mind, because Lego is just an absolutely extraordinary company in terms of how they have defended and grown their marketplace since they first started. Okay, so I want to just tell you a little bit about their origin story. Okay, so they started in 1932, and they started with a guy that was a Danish carpenter. Okay, so this is a Danish business, and he started making wooden toys, right? They hadn't even at that time invented hard-formed plastic, you know, injection molding. And, you know, he basically started this little toy shop after the Depression because his regular carpentry business wasn't doing very well. And then they realized, hey, look, there's a better way of doing this. Let's actually do some injection molding to the product, right? So they could basically create more quicker and certainly in better colors. And they actually, you know, patented that. And then you know, they basically, you know, started defining, you know, what the bricks would do. So before, when they were wooden, they obviously didn't have their little clunky bits that you could fit into. Over the course of the next sort of, you know, whatever it was, 20 years, it became the Lego that we know today, right? So they patented it in 1958. Now we know that obviously the Chinese have these horrible bricks, but they're nothing like as good as the Lego ones. So even though there's patents there, you know, they are, well, they're still quite distinct. And then, you know, they started branching off into other areas. So in 1968, the first Lego land park was built. And I don't know if any of you've been to a Lego land, but we've got one near Windsor. And, you know, again, it really kind of builds into their kind of wonderful, you know, golden circle in the middle, the Y. So whatever touch point you have with Lego, you just have this fabulous experience. To, at their core, what they want to do is inspire and develop children through creative play. And anyone who has had kids or seen kids playing with Lego, even with adults, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, as soon as I'm in a room and there's a whole load of Lego, I'm just like, yeah, let's just see if we can build something, you know. Doesn't matter what it is, it's just, it's a really fantastic creative, you know, product. And how do they do this? So every single thing they do, they want to basically create a system of play. So whether it is online, virtually, whether it is, you know, through, you know, theme parks, or whether it is through the bricks themselves, the idea is that it is through play. And, you know, what it is interlocking experience. So that idea of, if you know something about gamification, but the idea with gamification and games is this idea of progress, is this idea of creativity, is this idea of, you know, that you can build something. So the interlocking bricks are stable, they're strong, they're secure, they're in different colors, they have a, you know, myriad of different sort of creativity options, you know, as you all know, with you know, with Lego. And, you know, ultimately what they're about is inspiring, you know, develop the builders of tomorrow. Basically shapes everything they do. So if you look at the actual golden circle in the middle there, you know, their why is inspiring and develop children through creative play. And every single word in that is really, really important, because everything cascades out of that. Okay, so now let's kind of move into a little bit more about the product, price, place, promotion of what Lego have done. So now, first of all, we're just going to look at the product. So first of all, what's really interesting about the product is when people think about Lego as a product, they think of it, you know, as, you know, the core bricks, right? But actually they've done a huge amount of product extension, you know, in and around Lego products in every area of product, price, place, promotion, which we will see. So for a start, they've got the basic kind of core product, the building sets, which we've all seen that you can buy. Then they have, as well as that, over the last sort of, you know, since the 60s, right? So, you know, getting on for nearly 80 years now, 40 years now, they have been adding kind of, you know, instruction sets. So these are big technical sets. So you've probably seen them, you know, targeted to you know, adults or, you know, young adults that are a bit more technical. They also have, you know, digital apps. So they also have, you know, licensed into movies. You know, they also have sort of theme parks. So this is a company that's known absolutely for their basic bricks, but has responded to all sorts of really challenging forces coming into their area, and they have defended it incredibly well. Like, if you think about, you know, the top three, you know, kids toy companies, Lego would always be one of them in there. They have stayed relevant for a very, very long time. You know, and how they've done this. So obviously one of the big forces that's come into, you know, games generally, and we can see this from, you know, kids in pubs when their parents are taking them out for dinner, they're on their iPads, they're on their whatever they might be. The reality is the online world has really, really crushed the real world in terms of absolutely everything, right? So can you imagine, you know, the force of that change for a company that makes, you know, same sized form Lego bricks over and over again? I mean, the force of that change on the organization and the people within that organization responding to the digital age is huge. It is a massive transformation, and they've done it really, really well. But however, everything they do, so even by going into video games, even by doing other things in the digital world, they have always ensured that the product that they are building is linked to that core message of inspiring creativity. Okay, so customers have never been confused as to what's going on. You know, they've never been confused. They always understand that that core golden why is through every single experience. So now we go on to pricing, and this is possibly one of the ugliest slides I've ever seen, so I'm apologizing for that in advance, because I'm a bit of a one-man band on this course. I usually surround myself with beautiful looking PowerPoint presentations, but it is not a gift that is within me to give at the pace I'm moving at the moment. So right, super ugly slide, but the premium positioning on pricing here is really, really important. So Lego have never chosen to be a commodity product. There are products like them, and you've probably seen them coming over, you know, from China that look like Lego bricks, but in every single strata of pricing that Lego do, they always maintain that premium pricing. Now they have different levels, okay? So they've differentiated their product in terms of different levels. So there are different price points you can buy at, but they are always at the premium side of the overall toy market and anything else you could buy comparatively, right? So obviously you've got the entry level Lego, which is kind of the classic. Then you've got the premium, which is the Lego Technic. And then you've got, and I'm sure you've all seen them that are very, very cool, the Lego Architect ones where you can build, you know, cityscapes and all sorts of really fantastic stuff. So they've done some really interesting things with the with example to just you know, one area of their product, let alone the theme parks and the Lego games. And what's interesting about continuing to have a premium product, it has allowed them to create sufficient margin in their business so that they have been able to invest in the long term. Okay, so although there has been this threat for cheaper competitive prices, plastic bricks at lower prices coming in from all over the world, they have maintained their pricing by product differentiation, and clearly everybody knows that, you know, they are going to be paying a premium price. And what that has allowed them to do is basically contain the margin, not, you know, be pulled down into you know, selling lower margin and costs, and so they can invest that money in further product development. And again, you know, that is, you know, quite remarkable, because there is a lot of pressure from consumers to basically push down the cost. Right, so now we are on to place. So this is also for me absolutely fascinating, that you have a situation where Lego as a company has got so much control over where it sells its products. Okay, so we have all seen Lego products in toy stores, right? We've all seen that. But where they have extended into in order to show and illustrate their kind of golden why and that idea of play is also they have basically created their own Lego stores. And I don't know if you've been into any Lego stores, but it's all about play. So if you haven't been into a Lego store recently, it's kind of like, you know, an Apple store in terms of all the products are, you know, all out, and kids are encouraged to basically come and play as well as kind of peruse through the models. So it's kind of like museum, play, interactivity plus shop. And they also control their own online environment. So, you know, there's also an online environment where, you know, again, you know, the flavor and the experience is very much the same. And then they've done the same through theme parks. So, you know, when the boys were little, we used to go to Lego Land a lot. And even if you weren't on, you know, an activity that was to do with, you know, specifically building or whatever it might be, or looking around what they'd already built, you know, it was very much about immersive play, very much about, you know, running around and, you know, basically, you know, playing, rather than, you know, if you go to Disney World or something like that, which is all dominated by kind of rides, and it's a little less play focused, although saying that there are, you know, theme parks and play areas in Disney. But the point is that the focus really is very much coming back to their golden why. And what is incredible is, again, you know, if you look at the changes, the dynamic changes in the distribution landscape since, you know, 1936, this is a company that has just been incredibly creative in the way that they combat, you know, against the forces, you know, of place. So first of all, you know, you've got retail, massive retail expansion. You've also got massive consolidation, you know, in the retail space. You know, you've obviously got, you know, the arrival of the internet, you know, that which wasn't even invented when, you know, Lego was first invented. So, you know, they've had to, you know, change and pivot with regards to what they do there. You've got a lot of online, you know, oh, and I've got my presenter notes in there, which is great. I always get something wrong on these slides. So basically, you know, this idea of them having total control over their, you know, their where they sell their space, and ensuring that their brand experience runs through absolutely, you know, everything that they do, is critical to their success. And that all comes from, you know, the golden sphere inside that golden orb. The product embodies, you know, inspiring creativity, right? And you just see that again and again and again in every single experience that you get from Lego. And so they have been able to basically take something which is so simple and produce products and experiences online that are, you know, very, very different. Like, you know, I haven't played the Lego game. There's probably people on the course that have played the Lego game or even seen the Lego movie, but you can see that they've taken those characters and taken those concepts, but the core idea still remains the same. And this is where the trust with customers does not get broken. Yeah. And you can see the antithesis of that with something like Apple. So Apple, you know, their kind of strap line, or their kind of raison d'etre was think differently, right? And you had a generation of consumers like myself, which you could cut us in half and we were just Apple through and through. We were, you know, the people that were like, we just absolutely love Apple. But that trust is broken because now you look at their products and they don't even work. Like, it's just rubbish. They're overpriced. That trust element has been completely broken. Whereas if you look at Lego, there is a consistency in how they've utilized their 4Ps, product, price, place, promotion, in order to, you know, consistently innovate, meet the challenging demands of the market, but by the same token, you know, move forward. And throughout all of that, they have managed to retain margin, which, you know, is just incredible. So they are consistently, you know, able to create margin, which can be reinvested into the products and services in order to keep innovating. Quite just remarkable. So then when we talk about, you know, promotion, the promotion of Lego is also, you know, done in a very kind of, in a way that they have, you know, control over. So, you know, their real kind of core idea of how they, you know, promote their products is this idea of collaborative communities, essentially. So people doing things together. And you can see that, you know, through, you know, their social media, through their kind of Lego Lifetime app, and through their in-store experiences. So if the idea is play, it is obvious that, you know, one of the things that happens with play is it's done in a collaborative setting. So that is one of the key themes that kind of moves back through everything, you know, that they do on the promotion side. So we want to have our promotions to be to do with creativity and learning. So how do we make our promotional activity not like normal, you know, Mattel or whatever they might be competing against for the same pricing, but really about their core why, which is getting people to interact with the product, whether it's online, in store, or through theme parks. So I hope through that I've been able to illustrate just, you know, how extraordinary this company is. And in terms of the 5 forces, you can see, you know, you only need to roughly look back since kind of, you know, 1937 to see how massive the market has changed. And so this is a company that has had to really, really battle against those 5 forces constantly in order to innovate every part of their 4 Ps. So, you know, if we just look, you know, specifically at the digital threat, so, you know, physical toys, you know, anyone with kids now, anyone who's had kids knows there was a transformative, you know, element when the digital world came along. And now, you know, kids, they do have physical toys. Of course they do play with them and all of that, but there is a significant amount of share of wallet that goes into digital products. Okay. And the fact that Lego has not been left behind on that is, you know, quite extraordinary given the fact that where they came from, right? So they really have managed to, you know, create digital products that really do, you know, grab hold of, you know, the changes in what's going on, you know, in the digital world, but create new products that are true to themselves. The second thing is that they have always managed to hold on to that kind of premium, you know, that premium price model. But there has been pricing that allowed people to experience the Lego experience online while still maintaining premium pricing for, you know, the physical product or the entry level product, because obviously you pay for the Lego games. They've also done really well with their Lego digital first content in terms of promotion. And again, you know, that has, although it's moved from the physical world to the real world, that they've managed to hold on to a lot of the excitement and the core idea of, you know, staying true to its purpose of play. And then obviously they've moved a lot of stuff online. So if you look at their percentage of, you know, revenue from physical products versus now online products, you know, the online products are taking up a bigger and bigger slice of that, which is, you know, is just incredible pivoting. And one could say, well, all businesses have had to do that, but I do think coming from a, you know, a colored brick company to what they've done is really quite extraordinary. Now, I don't want to make out that, you know, everything is always linear, always good, and always, you know, sunshine in, you know, in the Valley of Commerce, because as we all know on this call, it is just not. It is absolutely not. No business ever does straight line, you know, from awesome to awesome every single year, right? Not over the period of how long this business has been, you know, going on for. So, you know, and you can see this crisis point. So, you know, what happened in the early 1990s? Well, obviously we got the birth of, you know, kind of mobile phone, then we got the internet, and this is where, you know, Lego faced, you know, a near miss. You know, they nearly went bankrupt because pressure came from the market and they didn't pivot, they didn't change quick enough. And as a response to that, their business obviously went down. And I think it's really, really important to, when you're looking at, you know, sales and marketing, you have to understand that, you know, bad things happening is not necessarily a bad thing, because the reality is it teaches you to change and it teaches you to pivot. And there is so much about being in business you cannot control. You cannot control what is going on in the 5 forces. There is no way that Lego could have, you know, anticipated the arrival of the internet. Okay, but it happened. And they had to have a decent response to, you know, to that. And they did. So yes, they got it wrong. Okay. Yes, they got it wrong. They started kind of refocusing back on their kind of core business. They learned lessons, you know, from basically what they got going wrong. the first time they tried it. And then basically, you know, what they did is, rather than, you know, launch into with a whole load of different online products, they started product extension into their existing market. So this is where you had the kind of the arrival of, you know, these licensed themes, where they did Star Wars, which was hugely successful. Again, so building up from the core of what they do, so looking at the absolute core product, the core of what's selling, the core of what's making, you know, their margin grow, the core of what they're known for, right? Looking at that and then building products out of that and slowly getting into the changing market. And then, you know, from that, obviously building, again, customer advocacy, because by really diving into the core of what makes you, or what made, you know, makes Lego unique, is really what, you know, inspires and delights their fans. And so by, again, when, you know, everything goes badly, pivoting back to your core customer, your core, what your product does, and then, you know, learning how to kind of ignite the flame from there, was their chosen strategy, and it worked really well. So you know, by sort of 2015, Lego had basically come, you know, out the other side. Lego is, you know, one of the most, you know, understood brands, you know, in all territories. So this is a global brand with huge present, you know, penetration in every single country, sorry. And you know, not only that, is that they have also come a huge success in other areas. So, you know, in terms of extending into the movie business, extending into the game business, they've done that really well. And they've also linked into other things that are happening in the market, like sustainability, right? So, you know, we all know that there's issues with, you know, climate and stuff like that. And, you know, Lego have kind of leaned into that. And consistently, I think they've just never really kind of broken the trust that, you know, their customers had in terms of the core kind of idea of play. And this is where, you know, the most successful brands lie, right? Not moving from that initial core that made customers fall in love with them. And so really doubling down on your why is really where you will find, you know, that kind of, that innovation and that true and ideal response to changes, you know, in the market. And Lego are a really good example of doing it well. And Apple are currently a really good example of it doing it really badly. So, you know, basically the key business lessons out of this is when you're looking at refreshing your product, price, place, promotion, okay, which you should be doing every quarter, at least every year, okay, the anchor that basically will hold you to not breaking the original kind of bond and promise that you had with your customers is staying true to your core purpose, right? So if you are known in the area of, you know, like growth engineering and is in the area of, you know, gamification, customers expect you to go back, not necessarily to gamification, but still to that idea of fun and that idea of joy and that idea of basically engaging customers. So everything to do with what we might innovate needs to be aligned, you know, with that. The other thing is that it's really important, and I think again Lego have done this really well because they've been able to, you know, maintain margin, is that quality is non-negotiable. So when you are trying to build a brand and you are trying to be consistent with that brand, you know, if you know, you need to basically have very clear and strict branding guidelines, very clear and stricting messaging guidelines, and those need to be adhered to 100%. And we are going to have other sections in the course that are going to go through branding guidelines and communication style guidelines and all of that kind of stuff. But this idea that only the best is good enough is absolutely critical. If you want to get a brand out there, right, and you want to, everyone needs to be rowing on the oars and pulling in the same direction. Once the strategy has been set, There can be no more kind of like, disagreement about what the right or the wrong strategy is until the end of the year and the results are in. That strategy has either worked or it hasn't. And, core to get only the best is good enough is everybody buying into that core mission, that core golden circle, right? Everyone's got to believe that our reason for living, existing, is the same. We are all on the same page, right? Because anything we do in and around price, product, place, promotion will come from our golden why. The other thing is that we do need to listen to our customers, but we must again stay true to our golden why. So there is no point developing features and other things that your customers want if it takes you far away from your golden why, because that will destroy your brand, right? Customers will be completely and utterly confused. So in the way of, growth engineering, if we started piling on and saying, we're number one for compliance, customers would be like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't think I've ever bought growth engineering for their compliance. Not saying I don't want it, but, at the end of the day, that's not what we're known for. So don't break that trust by listening so much to your customers that you basically dilute your brand, essentially. However, customers are a great place, to get new ideas from. And, and Lego have got this initiative, where if you, are part of the Lego community, you can actually push out ideas for how, what new Lego sets, there might be. So you can really start to become and feel part of that Lego community. Again, going back to one of their key philosophies in terms of, the idea of play. And, to a lesser extent, sustainability can drive innovation. I mean, I think that's a lesser point in the lessons of Lego, but still an important point that, they obviously want to get over as part of how they've pivoted and how they've changed. So in terms of homework, these are the questions for you to consider for your homework. First of all, just ensure that you have got your golden why down. Okay, you really need to have your golden why down in order to start the 4 Ps. So those of you who have been sort of going, okay, well, I'm just going to do my homework at the weekend, or I'm just going to do it, that is fine. But now is the time to basically pull what we've been learning all together so it makes sense. So first of all, you start with your Simon Sinek golden circle. So your what, your how, your why. Then you're going to go into your or the 5 forces, either way, it doesn't really matter. And then you're going to put the glue that holds those 2 things together, the product, price, place, promotion, around that to work out how you're pushing back through your central mission, vision and values, which is your core. You're pushing back into your business in order to defend, your margin and your competitive advantage in the marketplace. So don't think about product, price, place in, isolation, because they're not. I mean, they are a factor of what is going on in the market. They absolutely are. And as the market changes, your products, price, place, and promotion has to change. Okay, so we're going to look a bit more at this on Monday, where we talk about market size and market growth. So as small businesses, small medium businesses, we want to be focusing on the biggest bang for our buck. Okay, so we want to be leaning into themes and opportunities that offer the most opportunity for growth. Yes, absolutely, that's right. So when it comes to services, think of product in its broader sense with regards to what we mean by products. So products is services as well. So on Monday, we're really going to be looking at where does growth come from. So when the 5 forces come for us, negative things can often bring huge amount of opportunity. So if we look at, let's say, AI is a huge opportunity for every single business. AI is a massively and rapidly expanding market. So any business whether you are in the tech space or whether you are utilizing the tech space in order to, sell and distribute your products or whatever it might be, has to be a core part of thinking for your business. So let me just give you an example, of that. Chatbots on your website. We will be doing a deep dive in that. Chatbots haven't been a big thing on websites because they weren't even, they didn't really exist. Now in the world of automation and AI, they can. So we are going to be looking at the opportunities that huge market disruption delivers and how we can pivot in terms of the 4 Ps. But the core kind of idea with the 4 Ps is that the 4 Ps are your defense against the 5 forces. So first of all, you need to be clear about what is happening, out there in the market in order to combat that through, the 4 Ps. So when you're looking at your homework for this week, do combine all of those things in together because you're going to need them. So if you haven't thought about it before we start next week, then, to a certain extent, you're going to get left behind, because basically the course builds on, week on week on week. And if you haven't got them nailed down, then, you really do need to keep up with homework during the, over the weekend. So at the absolute bare minimum, you have to have your golden why. You have to have the 5 forces and you have to have your current 4 Ps. So what you're doing now and potentially what the opportunity to pivot might be in terms of, those 5 forces. 4 forces, because if not, by next week, when we start digging into, the real, nuances of these areas, you're just not going to have some of those core kind of themes, nailed down. Now, for those of you who basically don't have a business to work on and aren't in a business, just make one up. And make one up that you love. So if you're into fashion, make it into fashion. If you're into motorbikes, make it into motorbikes. It doesn't matter what it is, but the thought experiment will only come alive if you're working on a business that you're really able to kind of get your mind into and own that golden why. Okay. Right. So just on a final note, I want to, throw something in there, which I think is really interesting with regards to Lego. And this is the idea that great companies, last for a long time. And a lot of the reason they are able to last for a long time is that they are able to take a long-term view over things. Okay. So pivoting, in a market is not always easy. It is fraught with troubles. In order to basically ride those waves, you need to have, a very core central why, but you also need to have a steady hand and you need to have an approach which is over the long term. And so what I find really interesting about Lego is throughout, the whole of the 80s, where everything was all about, changes and, innovation in the financial services. And I'm sure that there must have been a billion approaches to take, Lego, do all sorts of interesting things with Lego. The majority of Lego is still owned by, the Lego family. And they are all also, this is the 4th generation of being led by somebody of the Lego family. So I believe they do have a proportion of their shares which are traded. I could be wrong about that, but the majority of the Lego company is held by the company. And I think it's just interesting to note how sometimes we are so focused on rushing to the end goal that sometimes, we just don't appreciate that sometimes you have to fail in order to kind of move forward. And this kind of long-term approach in terms of protecting margin. And again, Monday's session is going to be very, very much focused on looking at how we maximize growth, but through profitable growth, and how we're likely to get there, looking at, growth rates in different areas of the areas that we operate in, and how that impacts our business. So I'm not saying this is the right strategy. All I'm saying is that we don't hear about private companies that are consistently doing really, really well in the market as much as we hear about those companies that utilize capital markets, over those who don't. So that basically draws to a close the presentation for today. So are there any questions in anything that we've discussed this week? Are there any questions overall about anything that you want to ask now? Because we have got some time. Jared.
Yeah, actually two things, Juliet. I'm quite impressed about today, but it brings me to mind a Dutch company called Rituals. Maybe some of you know the name, some of you don't, which actually have been doing more than everything you share. And these guys just got started early this century, the year 2000, 5 boys that were the leader of them. Let's say it like this is or was, if you like, a marketeer, a global marketeer. And he, through travels, found out that actually us, and we're talking about humans, are always looking for happiness. We are spiritual thinkers, and he has been gathering stories around the world and transformed these stories into what he is calling home and body cosmetics, priced it well, so to speak, exactly your words. So to say, there is no debate. You pay what you pay, and you want to have it. And they opened their first shop where you can go through that experience of spirituality. In 2005, they got now 4,100 shops around the globe.
Wow.
The story is told everywhere. And the benefit of having it as a Dutch company, which is for you guys that live in, let's say, in Europe, they got a pretty large 17,000 square feet experience center in Amsterdam, where you can go through all the stories, experience spirituality, experience slow force. And you can imagine that in these days of AI, where we feel the competition with the machine, this thing is knocking on every door. People don't know, they come in queues to experience their personal spirituality. And in the House of Rituals, as it is called, go through all the rituals, wash your hands in a different way. So, you inspired me to share this with your presentation today. It might be the new Lego, because it deep dives into us, human hearts, feelings, and brains. So I've been excited. I was at their headquarters, and you go in there, and every room, every department is a story, is an emotion, is an odor. So I wanted to share that because, yes, I'm happy to go after my homework. Even nothing of this I can get done. The inspiration is great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jared. And that story that you've just told, I don't know how many of you on the call know of Rituals, but I certainly know of them and had the experience in department stores here in Andorra.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the full story behind it, but what I think is really interesting is in what one of the first presentations that we did, we talked a lot about emotional resonance. Yeah. And I think, Jared, just what you've said is that idea of humans connect at a very human level with brands. And, whether it's Lego through play, whether it's, Rituals through this idea of spirituality, bringing your business, whatever it is, down to that idea of how do you connect with emotional resonance, I think is an excellent point. And thank you very much for reminding us of the core of a golden why and why the golden why is so important. The strength of the golden why is based on the emotional resonance and the way that we are able to connect. So thank you very much for sharing that story, Jared. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Right, are there any other questions from you lovely lot before I unleash you and give you back 10 minutes of your lives on a Friday? Good. Okay, so well done. Make sure you keep up with your homework. It doesn't have to be fancy, okay? It can just be notes in an old book like this, okay? But get them down. And if you're working in a team, make sure that you're all on the same page. Okay, there's no point. So Iridescent team, growth engineering team, there's no point, you know, Harry doing all the work and then basically, you know, nobody else basically agreeing to what Harry's put down. So Harry's been posting all of his stuff and I've been reviewing it and it looks great. But at the end of the day, do you all agree? Obviously, Harry gets very little wrong. But anyway, just throwing it out there, just make sure that you're on the same page. Likewise, I know Iridescent, you are working together, but please make sure that you're joined up in your thinking. Because if you're working in a team, if you don't agree on the core why, then everything else is going to basically, you know, fall apart as we start moving through, you know, branding and all of those kind of things. So thank you very much. Well done for those of you who've attended every day. I'm very, very pleased to see your lovely faces. It does make it easier when we have real world participants on the call because I can see your faces. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks,
great weekend,
Julia.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wish you a great weekend.
Thank you. Chisel.